and welcome to IBSI's Forum on Israel, Africa, and Black America. I'm your host today, Joshua Washington, the Executive Director of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. Welcome. I will be joined a little bit later on by my lovely co-host and our Speakers Bureau Chief, Olga Mishway Washington. She'll be joining me soon. But in the meantime, we're going to be talking about a few things today. First of all, before I get into anything, because I want to say this at the outset this time, the theme music that you hear every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time is a song composed by Randy Sandoli. Randy Sandoli is a good friend of IBSI's, good friend of the Washington family, accomplished professional jazz pianist and composer, loves Israel, loves God's people, loves people in general. And he wrote this song. This one is called The First 7 Miles. And it's on his album called Simcha, which for those who speak Hebrew, it means joy. It's available on all streaming platforms. So that tune, as well as many others, are available on all streaming platforms. That's the theme song. That's been our theme song for our forum. Excuse me. For the past, I guess, few months now. So you can, right there, it says Randy Sandoli, Simcha, Sandoli, Sandoli. Check it out and get it for yourself. Over the past few years, he's really gotten into Israeli jazz, and it's very, very big influence on that album as well. So, and by the way, side note, the graphic designer for that album is also our graphics designer for IBSI, which is Leah Washington, who's a professional visual artist and graphic design artist. A lot of the artwork that you see surrounding IBSI and our music and everything is done by Leah. So please check it out. Give Randy some streams. Get him some listens. Bring him out to your city. All right, you guys. So we got a few things to get into today. First of all, thank you all for joining. I'm wearing the shirt so that I can remind myself to say this. But for those who can't see, boom. Be a legacy builder for the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. A legacy builder is someone who supports IBSI on a monthly basis. You can give a very little amount if you want to. As you can see, if you're on Restream, the QR code is right there. If you're on Clubhouse or Instagram and you don't see the code, you can go to IBSI.org and become a legacy builder with the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel today. So make sure that you do that, y'all. We really appreciate your support. We're coming to the end of the year. There will be an end of the year letter that will be sent out soon. But I will say this for now: it's been a very, very eventful journey for IBSI in terms of our travels, and then also seeing the fruits of our labor this year. We've, our ambassadors, our IBSI pastors have also been able to serve and speak and do other things in different capacities this year. And we'll be sharing more of that with you, some of the returns on the investments that IBSI has made and how that's affected the culture, how that's affected the communities of our ambassadors and the communities of our IBSI pastors as well, and what we're going to continue to do next year. So please, with your help and with your support, we can do these things. And I'm not going to lie, we were able to do all the stuff that we were able to do. Some of the times we've had to come out of pocket, and we were happy to do so because the crucial work that needs to be done. But obviously we're trying to get to a place where that doesn't have to be a reality for us anymore, especially now as things are growing. So the more legacy builders that we can get, the better. Thank you so much. I see a comment there that's saying we'll do. Thank you. Every little bit helps, and with our support, and even with the numbers that IBSI has in our following, if each person commits to giving like $18 a month, that would make a huge difference for us in terms of what we were able to do and how quickly we're able to do it. Thank you. So, yes, so let's get into a couple of things, y'all. One last announcement and there's no poster for it yet, but on January the 12th, 2024, our founder and CEO, Pastor Dumisani Washington, and myself will be at the Wilshire Boulevard Temple in Los Angeles. We're going to be doing some amazing work with our friends out there. and both in speaking and in music. So we'll both be doing a little bit of music. Our CEO will be doing somewhat of like a conversation with the rabbi there at the temple, and I'll be doing some music with some local musicians, some professional string players, and other musicians as well. It's going to be a really great time, and we'll be working with the kids there too, which is a passion of mine. My dad started a music school. I helped run the music school, and we love working with kids, and so that kind of like combines all the things we love into one event. So if you're in LA, if you're in the SoCal area, you should come out and see us. We'll be posting more about that very, very soon. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is November the 19th. If you all, I remember I made a million announcements about this. Yesterday, we had an amazing time in Fort Mill, South Carolina, doing our Standing with Israel event. It was so incredible, so much fun. The music, the speakers were powerful and dynamic, and we had a nice full room of both Christians and Jews coming together in solidarity with Israel. I just want to show you this reel. It's a few minutes. Just take a look at it and just look at some of the amazing stuff that happened that night. Uh-oh. All right. So you can check out the rest of that on right now it's on our Instagram page, at IBSI now, and or anywhere else. I think it's up on our YouTube as well. And we had some like I said, speakers. People came out from as far as Atlanta, Georgia, as far south as Atlanta, Georgia, as far north as Winston-Salem, and even Asheville, North Carolina, all the way down to Fort Mill, South Carolina. One of our speakers happened to have just come in from Israel. He agreed to come speak. It was a really great night. We had our IBSI pastor. One of our IBSI pastors was represented. One of our IBSI ambassadors spoke. He was represented as well. And you had other pastors and rabbis and community leaders come and speak. And there was lots of music, lots of celebration, lots of dancing. It was so much fun. So check that out, y'all. We thank you. We're going to be doing more music and education events in the new year. And so we're excited about that. So yes, that was a lot of fun. And we're looking forward to more. Now, let's get back into what's going on in Israel right now. Obviously, and we've been following this, and I know many of you have been following this as well, since October 7th, when Hamas declared war on Israel by doing what they did in invading Israel, invading its borders, killing over 1,400 people, taking over 200 people as hostages, raping, killing, burning alive. Even worse things than that, and more things are coming out by the day. We're learning more things. We're finding out more atrocities that were committed by Hamas on the Israeli people and on the foreign nationals that were there. And among the hostages are also foreign nationals as well as Israelis. And as we've been saying in some of our live events, Israel is risking their lives. The IDF is risking their lives to rescue all of them, not just the Israelis, but every single hostage that is still trapped in Gaza. One unfortunate story, one tragedy that's come out of this right now is what we want to touch on, and that is there was a student from Tanzania who was in Israel, and his name is Clemens Mtenga. Clemens was in Israel as a student. He was there to as an agricultural intern. One of many Africans from all over the continent that go to Israel every year to learn and study agriculture. He was his body was found in Gaza. So it's been confirmed that Hamas killed him um, while he was a hostage in Gaza. He was among the over 240 hostages that was in Gaza. They killed him. His body was found. He has another counterpart, another student from Tanzania. His body has not been found yet, so we're not sure if he's alive or dead. But it has been confirmed that Clemens Mtenga is no longer alive and that Hamas killed him. And one of the things that, and we're going to be writing this, there'll be an article that will come out about this in IBSI Substack as early as tonight, Africa Israel Weekly, or tomorrow morning, I should say. And so that'll be up soon. One of the things that we keep stressing at IBSI, and it's not a talking point. We don't get marching orders from I don't know some entity somewhere else or whatever. These are things that just we've observed over the years, and particularly our CEO over decades, really, is that two things. One, when Israel was attacked on October 7th, make no mistake, you guys, make no mistake, there are people on all sides of the aisle that are piling on Israel, dumping on Israel, left, right, and center. And particularly when it comes to the right side of the aisle, you have some conservatives who say that they have that old talking point of, well, we have problems in America, we need to worry about what's going on in America, right? And so that's kind of their reasoning for, I don't know what their reason is, because they usually, after they say that, they start having opinions about what's going on in Israel. So clearly they're concerned about what's happening in Israel, even if they're misinformed, but then they also turn around and say, well, we have problems in America. But what happened in Israel affects the world, both in the immediate sense and in the long term. In the immediate sense, because in a very practical way, Hamas killed members of other countries, and Hamas has members of other countries as hostages. There's, I think, at least 12 American hostages in Gaza right now. Among those who were shot and killed at the music festival were German kids from Italy. You have people from all over the world, because it's a festival. There are festivals. I was just talking to a friend like 3 or 4 weeks ago about a music festival that's held in Amsterdam, and she was telling me, oh, it's a great festival, you guys got to go there and play. And I was like, yeah, I definitely want to go. We should try to make that happen. Like, that kind of stuff happens all the time. People travel to other countries to go to music festivals, to listen to music festivals, to play in festivals, to be a part in some way, to participate, to intern, whatever. So it wasn't just, and I'm not saying just because Israelis aren't important, but what I'm saying is, to those who say that, our focus on Israel is so, it's just distracting from what's happening in America. No, this affects us as well. So that's the immediate sense, right? We have American hostages in Gaza. There are Americans dead right now as a result of what happened on October 7th. As a matter of fact, and not to beat a dead horse, but the Taylor Force Act that we keep talking about, that was named after an American who was killed because of a terror attack in Israel. Okay, so this affects Americans. All the terrorism that we see happening all around the world, Bayard Rustin was Martin Luther King's confidant, his right-hand man. Bayard Rustin was a big proponent of the state of Israel. Bayard Rustin, after Dr. King died in 1975, Bayard Rustin founded, Dr. King died in 1968, but I'm talking about in 1975, Bayard Rustin founded an organization called Black Americans to Support Israel Committee, BASIC. Black Americans to Support Israel Committee, and that organization was dedicated to standing with Israel and the Jewish people and calling out the Arab powers for how they have been attacking Israel and how they have been not blackmailing, but how they have been coercing and bullying African countries into standing against Israel while oppressing them and not and hiking up oil prices and all those different things, which in turn affect Black Americans, right? One of the tenets of BASIC was Arab oil prices have had a disastrous effect on Africans and African Americans, right? And he talked about how, because of the Arab leaders' treatment of Israel, and because of the Arab leaders' treatment of those who stood with Israel on the continent, they it caused both for oil in terms of what gas for us, the prices would hike up. There are Arab countries like Egypt who would coerce other African countries to break diplomatic ties with Israel, and they would promise them things. We'll give you oil, we'll protect you, or whatever. And not only did they not follow through on their promises, but they would sometimes do the opposite. They would hike up oil prices. They would be responsible for the terror in those countries that they said they would protect. All those things, right? And that's Bayard Rustin was coming from the place of both standing with Israel, but calling out and speaking truth to power, calling out the evils in the powers that be. So he founded BASIC, and the leaders of BASIC, A. Philip Randolph was a part of it. Rosa Parks was a signatory. There's so many different jazz musicians and actors and politicians and community leaders. Over 200 signatures from prominent Black stalwarts in the community were part of this. Why am I bringing this all up? Because they understood then that what goes on in Israel affects the rest of the world. One of the articles that Bayard Rustin penned in the New York Times, he warned the international community. He warned Black leaders about embracing Yasser Arafat, and he warned at the UN. He warned the UN about ignoring the terrorism that was going on in Israel. He said, if we don't do something about this, that terrorism is going to be exported all over the world. Fast forward to 2023. Was he right? I mean, absolutely, he was right. Let's just try to remember the past few years. Remember what happened in Brussels. Remember what happened in Paris. Remember what happened. I mean, my gosh, remember what happened 9/11 in New York. Like Bayard Rustin said, if we don't cut this off now, what we're seeing in Israel is not going to stay in Israel. It's going to be exported all over the world. The terror that the PLO is enacting on Israelis is going to happen. The first intifada, the second intifada, that stuff is going to be copy and pasted all over the world. I mean, the man was a prophet. Look at where we are now. So what we're seeing now, and Hamas is making no bones about this. They've said the West is next. Europe, you're next. United States, you're next. And as we've been seeing from the protests, they have supporters all over the world. I mean, in London, there were hundreds of thousands of people marching down the street, waving the Palestinian flag, but some people were chanting Intifada revolution. Remember in 2021, they were chanting globalize the Intifada. Right, we can talk about from the river to the sea, but for me, the more blatant one is, what were the intifadas? People try to act like they don't that it has a different meaning somehow. No, the intifada has a specific context, and both intifadas were very, very disastrous and bloody for the Israelis in Israel. You can't pretend like that. That would be like chanting Mein Kampf, and then someone going, "What are you doing?" And you go, "Oh, Mein Kampf literally just means my struggle. It doesn't mean anything other than that, right? We're just struggling." Like, no, there's a very, very specific cultural context that goes with Mein Kampf. So if you were to chant that or say, Mein Kampf is great, you are purposefully embracing Hitler's teachings. And if that's not the messaging that you want to get out, then change your message. So what's happening in Israel right now? Israel's not just fighting a war for Israel. Israel's fighting a war for the rest of the world. While we sit there and spit on Israel and perpetuate all these lies and drinking all this stuff, I'm telling you guys. So what's happening now? What happened to this Tanzanian student? What happened to Clemens Mtenga? Shows that, one, again, Hamas doesn't discriminate. They didn't discriminate when they broke into Israel. They killed Jews, they killed Christians, they killed Muslims, they killed Druze, they killed foreign nationals, they killed Africans. It did not matter, which is why I say that we need to stop with the messaging of the focal point of our message shouldn't be look at the brown Jews, look at the black Jews, look at how many Jews of color Hamas killed. Hamas doesn't care, and Israel's enemies don't care either. They play that game because they know that we play that game. They play that game because they know that we play that game. The other thing about what's happening is that, again, and I said it last week or 2 weeks ago, and I'll say it again, Africa's enemies are Israel's enemies, period. Period. What hasn't been getting much airtime, but because IBSI, our focus is Africa and Israel, we've been following as best as we can, is what's happening in other African countries. Sudan is going through it right now, guys. Right? The Congo's going through it now. And particularly in Sudan, the groups that are terrorizing and murdering people in Sudan right now are terror groups that are linked to the Islamic Republic of Iran. There are terrorist groups that are linked to Hamas. That's always been the case. Boko Haram pledged allegiance to Iran, right? Much of the African continents, much of the terror on the African continent is backed and financed by the mullahs of Iran. The same mullahs of Iran who Hamas thanked for backing, the same mullahs of Iran who call Israel the little Satan and America the big Satan, that Iran is funding terror on the African continent all over the continent. We have to push past, we have to look past our own, whatever our myopic view is, because Hamas's goal is no different than the goals of many of the Arab leaders pre 1948, post 1948, and that is to expand. You guys, that is to expand. That's been the Arab, in terms of Arab leaders, that's been their legacy for the longest. Arabs are indigenous to Arabia. Okay, if they're indigenous to Arabia, then why is Arabia, quote unquote, all over North Africa and the Middle East? That's colonialism. That is expansionism. That is imperialism. And that's what Hamas wants. That's what ISIS wanted to do. That's what Hezbollah wants to do. Once they get rid of Israel, they're going to just continue fighting each other about who gets dominance over the region. That's always been the case. While we act like there's some sort of freedom fighting organization for the people of Gaza, no, Hamas does. They got the same ambitions as all the other terror groups. They want to rule. They want to reign, and they want to reign all over the world. And so and I want to stay here for just a moment with Clemens Mtenga. So as you all know, in June of this year, IBSI was in Israel. Our IBSI ambassadors were in Israel. And among the many places that we visited, it was just such a powerful trip. And even there are still things that we're unpacking now. But among the many places that we visited, we went up to the northern border with Lebanon. And we went to a kibbutz, Kibbutz Malkia. Beautiful place. Good friend Eitan, who runs that place, and he trains and is with the young soldiers that are there. He sees them as his sons, and it was really nice to be able to interact and talk with him and them and learn some things. They got beautiful fruit and vegetables. We got to eat. We had a little, I think it was apricot that we all had together. He gave us. He picked up one each for us to eat there, and we looked at the stuff that grew and their program. And one of the things that he told us was that they have a program. This is not unlike anything in Israel, right? It's not unlike anything else in Israel. This happens all over the country. But there's a program in Kibbutz Malkia where they take in interns from all over Africa, all over the different countries of Africa. They come to Israel, these students, and they come as agricultural interns. And they learn how to do all how to grow food, how to sustain food, all that stuff. And Israel does this for these students with no strings attached. They send them back to their countries and say, look, our only desire for you is to teach your friends, your family members, teach your community these things so that you guys can be able to sustain yourselves. There's no obligation on deliverables or return on the investment. They just invest and pour into these kids. They have like a 1 year or 2 year program where they come and they learn these things and they go back to their countries. It's amazing. From countries like Tanzania, Uganda, places, South Africa, these students who are coming and learning these things and then coming back. And it's like, they cannot, and it's also a chance for them to make a little bit of money while they do it as well. So that's what Israel does for these students all over the place. You never hear about it because it doesn't really get reported on that much unless you follow IBSI or follow the organizations. That's a picture of us, if you guys can see, at Kibbutz Malkia. Right behind us, I believe, is Lebanon. And as you know now, Hezbollah has joined the fight against Israel in Lebanon. They've been shooting some rockets here and there. I mean, this is going nowhere good. But yes, in this picture right behind us, is Lebanon, you guys. We had a great time there. But the thing is, that's the work that Israel does. And that's the work that Israel has always done. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. There is no other country on earth that does as much for and with Africa than Israel does. I promise you. I promise you, and you can try and prove me wrong. You can try to find another country that does more with Africa than Israel. You won't find it. And someone just commented here, yes, absolutely. So not only does Israel bring these students in to learn, but they also send experts to these countries. I interviewed someone a couple of years ago, and it's on one of the old podcast episodes, which, by the way, we will be resuming the podcast episodes again soon. And one of the things that she was telling me was that she was a part of an organization that they're the first responders, right? When different countries would face natural disasters, and they have this thing called the first in, last out program, where they're the first responders and they're there until whatever needs to get fixed is fixed. And that includes things that even extend beyond the natural disasters. One of the things that they do, I think this is Israel Aid. One of the things that they do is, like, let's pick a country for like Haiti, right? They'll go in Haiti first, and they will help rebuild houses and get people food and shelter, temporary shelter in the meantime, and all that kind of stuff. And once that work is done, Israel will talk, the Israeli NGO leaders, right, non-governmental organizations, these leaders will then meet and talk with the community leaders of these countries, right, in these towns, in these provinces, and they will discuss the other issues that are going on and how they can help. Well, how can we be of service, right? We're not going to come in and tell you what to do, but we have certain expertise in technology and other things. How can we help you? And once that's identified, let's say the issue is domestic violence, right? Violence against women specifically, or whatever. Then Israel partners with the community leaders on the ground to help them to combat these things, whether it's therapy, whether it's group counseling, whether it's schooling, or whatever the case is. The problem could be educational, it could be social, societal, but they stay and they help with these problems, right? That's what Israel does. And what do they ask for in return? I mean, not much. If you're a business person, you're like, that's actually not a very good way to do business, because you're not requiring much of them. And you ask that they're, at some point, maybe sometime in the future, their leaders will actually vote against these anti-Israel resolutions in the UN. But that's that's kind of a long shot, right? That's our hope. But what we see, and it's something that goes far back, right? This is in the DNA of Israel, is they see that a strong Africa means a strong Israel, and a strong Israel is a strong Africa, and they can actually be really, really strategic partners. Where other countries are trying to lecture to these, this perfect timing for you to come in, Olga. This is perfect. While other countries are lecturing to African countries about how they do what they're supposed to do, Israel is just, they're like, hey, how can we help? What do you need? Can we do some stuff together? Can we be friends? And that's something that's worth noting. But when Hamas broke in and killed, among many people, these African students as well, they're showing you they have no regard for any of those things. And their linked groups are also terrorizing Africans as we speak. So they are not friends of Africa. Hi, Olga.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good
Olga,
evening.
I want... Say again, sorry.
I was just saying good evening to everybody watching and listening.
Absolutely. Oh, and I see Judith's comment. Thanks for standing with Israel. Your program in South Carolina last night was amazing. We watched the live stream in Toronto. Yes, you guys, the Canadian Anti-Semitism Education Foundation, they partnered with us and they live streamed our event in Toronto. They had a whole event where people came out. We talked about, should they wear pajamas or should they dress up? And we said, okay, just casual clothes. So they came out, they had food, they watched the whole thing live. They also sent in a video, greeting video for us, and it was beautiful. So we want to thank you. CAEF will be there with you in April to do some stuff live with you, some music as well, and speaking. And so we're looking forward to that. So thank you, Judith, and thank you to Canadian Anti-Semitism Education Foundation. Olga, I want to give this to you because I talked about it a little bit, but I want you, because of you being South African and you being very connected to what's going on right now in Africa. Sorry, someone asked. It's called the Canadian Anti-Semitism Education Foundation. That's what they're called. Olga, I don't know if you've seen this like I've seen it, but I've seen some young African activists, right? who hearts are, to me, they're clearly for their countries, right? Whether it's Sudan, whether it's the Congo, whether it's Tanzania, whether it's South Africa, and so I see them really screaming and yelling and trying to call attention to the terror that's happening right now, particularly in Sudan. What, like, people are being slaughtered, and there are these terror groups that are committing all these atrocities. But then what I also see is this kind of shift where they will still kind of see Israel as not their friend, and so they still kind of do the free Palestine thing and say, Israel, is, we, just because I'm standing against terror doesn't mean that I'm with Israel, and so they in a way they kind of give a tacit, approval almost to Hamas while calling out terror in their country and not really seeing the connection between the two. What do you I don't know if you've seen that, but if you have, what has been your response to that? What do you have to say in response to that?
Well, depending on the mood that I'm in, it's either heartache or it's anger,
Mm.
and it's primarily from a place of in relation to the heartache because they just don't know. The majority of these youngsters that are on the streets and that are protesting and that are using their voice to amplify what they believe is a justice issue or human rights issue is because that's what they've been told.
Mm.
They are ignorant of the truth, they are ignorant of the facts, as well as ignorant of the history that Israel has with that particular nation and how Israel has actually partnered with that nation for purposes of uplifting those nations, that particular nation, depending on the country that they're in, especially when Africa, the various nations were getting independence from colonization in the 1950s and the 1960s.
Mm.
That's the first thing. The second thing is the ignorance in relation to who Hamas is and who the terrorist organizations are. The
Mm.
truth in relation to what their purpose is, what their end goal is, and how it is directly linked to their survival on the African continent. Another point is that Africa is a very big continent, and depending on the news outlets that they watch, and also, frankly, depending on their interest in issues that affect them on the continent itself, they may be very ignorant of the fact that in neighboring countries, there is terrorism going on. By way of an example, in South Africa, we don't have to look very far. People will talk about there's terrorism happening in Nigeria, which there is. They'll talk about terrorism happening in Kenya, which there is. But they won't talk about the terrorism that's happening in Mozambique. I come from Johannesburg. Johannesburg to the border of South Africa and Mozambique is about a 5, 6 hour drive. It's not far at all. So if
Mm.
I were just to drive 5, 6 hours, cross the border into Mozambique, I will integrate with a people who to this day are experiencing terrorism and who Israel has been able to offer assistance to. And thank God that assistance has been taken because they've refused to take the lie on. So the heartache is an ignorance. And so there's a desperate, desperate need for education. And then the anger is where some of these young people have been duped, but are also unwilling to take a pause, to step back for a moment and be like, maybe I should apply some critical thinking and consider what's going on at this moment.
It's interesting, Olga, when you said that they've been duped, and it's funny because I see them as, I agree with you, but I also see it as, um, in some ways they seem to be a little bit more awake than, let's say, us here in the West, right? They're aware of more things. They seem to be at
It depends
least,
on what topics, I would agree.
sure, and okay, and then, but then it's almost like they don't even realize that even with that, they're still, like you said, they're still being duped in a way. So, like, they may be aware of a little bit more, and they may be able to see from a different perspective and have, maybe a wider purview, but still there's like the narrative is still being shaped for them. So the fact,
Yeah.
like you mentioned Mozambique, yeah, like, okay, you would think that someone who is on the continent and really trying to fight these things would see, like you said, those patterns, but it doesn't seem like they do, or maybe that they're willing to, if that makes sense.
So yes, I think all of those countries not willing to. There are also a lot of other issues that impact Africans on a day-to-day basis. I can more
Mm.
specifically speak to South Africa, but these patterns see across the continent, and that is, what am I going to eat today?
Mm.
If the concern is, what am I going to eat today? What am I going to put in front of my children? And also, am I not going to be killed when I walk out of my door? South Africa, by way of an example, has got the highest murder rate in the world. Still come and visit us. Still come and visit us. I'm not trying to scare anybody away. You just need to know where to go. But South Africa's got one of the highest crime rates in the world. And so people are having to consider and grapple these issues. We have an issue relating to just keeping the lights on. Load shedding is a very real issue. Water shedding, unfortunately, right now is a very real issue. And so people are concerned about what we call bread and butter issues.
Yeah.
My challenge to them is that, yes, amongst your concerns about bread and butter issues, consider who are your friends, who are people on the international field that can help you address those issues. And if you think about it in that way, then you'll be able to recognize that the people that you are marching against, such as Israel, are not going to be, or rather, the people that you're marching against are the very ones that can help you.
Mm.
The other layer, Josh, that is important for us to note is that in the history of relations with Israel, many African nations have got a layered, complicated relationship. And what do I mean by that? By way of an example, you have nations such as Zambia, you've got nations such as Tanzania. I think you may have spoken about Clemence's murder already.
Yep.
But those nations started off with a positive relationship with Israel, and then there was the breaking of the ties, and part of the breaking of the ties involved pressure that was applied on those African continents or those African governments by the Arab League. There was lies in relation to who Israel was, that it was a colonizer state because it had triumphed in the 1967 war, and in its triumph, it had gained land. So they're ignorant about the laws of war, international laws. And so then it's like, okay, we have been told that this country is a colonizer, it's taking land. We see them taking land as a result of these
Yeah.
wars. We don't understand what the wars actually mean. Then you've also got this influence of Arabs, as well as the Palestinian Liberation Organization, as it was known at that time, because there were still um, various countries, predominantly South Africa, that was having people in exile. And so when people were running two different countries and having to be taken in from an exile perspective, there's that added layer there. So yes, there's various layers, but still, Africans, especially African young people, they are great at thinking if they want to. They're bright if they want to. Our leaders, if they really will sit at the feet of their elders and really interrogate these issues, they will come to the truth. And again, that then goes to, for me, the anger part of it, to say, guys, we can, and you need to. Literally, your lives depend on it, your livelihoods as well.
Wow. And Olga, so I'm hearing everything you're saying, and one of the things that I think is gripping is the fact, like we talked about right before you came on, was that not only it goes beyond Hamas just not caring about the color of the skin of the people that they kill. That is absolutely true. I mean, they've killed foreign nationals and Israelis of all colors, all shapes and
Yeah.
sizes. Raped women, burned people, everything. It had nothing to do with what they looked like, what language they spoke. But it's even deeper than that. It is that Hamas and the other terrorist organizations that are linked to Hamas, that are linked to the mullahs in Iran, there is a hatred of Africa,
Mhm,
right? Hamas does harvest the organs of Africans.
mhm,
Boko Haram, even though they're Nigerian, they enslaved Africans, right? They
mhm,
the whole "bring back our girls" thing, "bring back our boys," like
mhm.
there is this anti-Africa nature of, and this is even from the African terrorist groups. There's a hatred of Africa. There's a subjugation. There's always been that the case. Um, Clarence, I mean, not Clarence, his name just escaped me right now. The former, he's passed away now, former Black Panther, Eldridge Cleaver, was a radical, very much anti-Israel, very much anti-American, all that stuff. And he spent years in Algiers and in Cuba, and he got to see communism up close. He got to see the Arab enslavement of Africans and the treatment of Africans up close. And he was like, my goodness. Now, this was in the 60s. And he said, they're more racist there than the white races are here in America. And this was during the 60s. This was like at the height of all the civil rights stuff. He was like,
Yeah.
they're worse over there. So that's always been the case. And the thing that breaks our hearts, and especially us at IBSI, the most is that it's deeper than skin color. We don't want Africa to rise. We're
It's an
trying to
ideology,
keep Africa
right?
down. It's ideology, absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
a mindset. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go. Yep.
No, no, that's what I was gonna say, that it's an ideology, it's a mindset, it's an
Mm.
attitude, that through which they see themselves as better than,
Mm.
right? And, I would even say that it's a supremacist type of mentality. and it comes at the cost of anybody who dares stand in their way
Right.
of what they see as what they're supposed to be doing. So for Boko
Absolutely.
Haram, they're about slaughtering anybody that doesn't believe the same as they do. And that's the same whether it's Al Shabaab in the east of Africa, whether it's Al Qaeda in various parts of the African continent. They definitely are, as you say, they hate Africans. And I said this maybe about a week ago on an Instagram reel that if the people that are protesting on the streets in support of Hamas and their friends think that Hamas is going to remember them and say, "Oh, thank you so much. You were there supporting us. We're going to spare you." Like they're fools. They're fools. Hamas is not going to care.
Mm-mm.
Hamas is looking at the count and going, "Woohoo, yay, all right, you're helping us move our narrative forward," and then they're going to come back for us.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's the danger of how the West deals with skin color. That this is the danger, right? It's easy for us to call out white Nazis, white supremacists. It's easy for us to look at Hitler and say, oh, he was, although some people now have that kind of mixed up, but still the vast majority of people can still look at Hitler and say he was a bad person in
Mhm,
character. But what we're seeing now, and this has been happening on TikTok and everything, what's trending now is actually Osama bin Laden was actually kind of a good guy, you guys. I think he was just misunderstood. And part of the reason why it's becoming a thing for us, not all of it, because there's other stuff there, but part of it is because he's brown. That's it. That's it's not if Osama bin Laden was a white guy from Eastern Europe, I don't think we'd be having this. We would revive this conversation and talk about the merits of Osama bin Laden. But the fact it doesn't matter that he was a son of a billionaire, so he was not oppressed, he was not a part of an impoverished class, that he wanted to impose Sharia law all over the world. No, the fact that part of the blinders that we have on is because Osama bin Laden was a brown Arab, and so that is in a lot of Westerners' eyes that makes him not have agency over himself, right? He doesn't have. He's absolved now from the actions that he did because he's
mhm,
just a victim,
mhm,
and so that is the same ideology that gets us, that has us overlook. I said it before, and people got upset when I said it. Arab Nazis. That's really what they are. And the fact, if you find yourself cringing at me saying that, then there is something wrong with the way you think. Because if you didn't mind me saying white Nazis just now, then you really shouldn't mind me saying Arab Nazis, because these Arabs are wanting to kill Jews. That's what Nazis did, and they want to take over the world. That's what the Nazis. They had the same goals. Uh, the Nazi Party was very much aware of the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al Husseini. They visited each other.
mhm,
The Grand Mufti of Jerusalem went, and this was before Israel was a state. So this was an Arab Grand Mufti of British Mandate Palestine,
mhm,
Jerusalem. He would visit the death camps. He visited Heinrich Himmler. He and Hitler had private audiences together. He would march. He was walking with Hitler across the Nazi party. There's a picture of them doing the Nazi salute. Like this is what the Nazism was. Not a Hitler made it about skin color, but the ideology part of it was the extermination of Jews. So what we're seeing now, like when our friend Rachel Waba said her grandfather, they left Egypt as Jews when Mein Kampf became a bestseller, and it was translated to Arabic and it became a bestseller. That's Nazism, you guys. And it has nothing to do with skin color. It has everything to do with this evil spirit that wants to exterminate the Jews and also like rule over the whole world with an iron fist.
mhm, mhm.
I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Olga. I just went on a little tangent there. Go ahead.
No, no worries. I think the only addition that I'll make is the failure of the education system, not only here in the West, but unfortunately across the world, and that we're not teaching our young people one history. We're looking at revisionist history, that is
Yep.
through a Marxist lens. We only want to see things through the eyes of the oppressor versus the oppressed. And then another failure, but as part of the education system failure, is that young people just don't think. You take whatever's there and don't interrogate it and don't apply logic to it, and you're just like, okay, it has to be because I'm told that, or it has to be because, like you
Mm-hmm.
say, it's a darker skinned color than somebody that's a lighter skin color, and so that is a tragedy in itself as well.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. And I realized just now as you were talking that we went to DC on Tuesday, so we haven't had a live since then. I thought it was the week before, but I realized we didn't really talk about that. So I do want to pivot to that, but before I do, because we have a lot of people who are logged on right now, which is fantastic. Thank you guys. Welcome, and thank you for being here. Again, this is the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, And this is our weekly forum on Africa, Israel, and Black America. I see some people commenting who came last night. Monica, thank you for driving all the way down from Asheville to see us. That was a long drive. Again, some of you guys came from very far to see us yesterday and be at our Standing with Israel event. It was amazing. We'll talk more about that soon. Right now, for those who are on, again, I said this in the beginning, but become a legacy builder. Right now, I think Maria is about to put the QR code up again. Go to IBSI.org and just commit to a small amount every month. Commit to 18 is, I love that number. Commit to $18 a month. Each one who's watching right now, commit yourself to $18 a month. Maybe, don't do coffee one day a week each week and take that money and put it into helping us do what we do, because like I told you before, we're doing the work that we're doing because we know this is something we're called to do and it's a passion of ours. There were many times this year when we had to come out of pocket and we didn't complain about it, but we do recognize that that's not a sustainable way to run a nonprofit. So please, if you love the work that we're doing and you love the event yesterday, you love watching us on Mondays, you love our content on our Substack, the videos that we put out, the events that we put on, all those things, please become a legacy builder today and help us to really get the wheels going. All the stuff that we've done in 2023, we've done as best as we can with what we had, but just imagine what we can do if IBSI became fully funded. So please consider doing that. Okay, enough of that commercial break. So this past Tuesday, we were in Washington, D.C. for what was the event called? What was the name of it? Do you remember, Olga?
March for Israel. It was a March for Israel.
March for Israel. March for Israel in D.C. Almost 300,000 Israel supporters, Christians, Jews. Yeah. I'm sure there were even non-religious people there. 290-something thousand people who bussed in. There were dozens of buses from different cities, from Baltimore, from as far out as I think it was like Tennessee even. Some people flew out from California. Where else, Olga? I mean, we came from North Carolina, Charlotte, right?
Yeah. So people from all over the country, to your point, whether it was by train or bus or car or airplane, there was a lot of people. They say that the 300,000 count was just those that walked through I don't know what those metal detector thingies are called,
right?
But that's the count that happened. But there were a lot of people that were on the other side of that weren't included in that count. So some are even throwing around the number of 500,000. I don't know how accurate that may or may not be, but it definitely was a sea of people.
900 came from Detroit, Monica said. So you had at least a couple 100,000 people in the outer court, I'm going to say. And then you had almost 300,000 people in the inner court. And then we didn't have a Holy of Holies, so that wasn't there was no number there. But it was a huge.
At least that was a VIP section.
I guess the VIP section was the Holy of Holies. There you go. It was huge. It was beautiful in terms of like we got to see a lot of people that we haven't seen in a long time. We got to connect with people. Some of the speeches were, in my opinion, very powerful. And so that we went, me and you, Olga, my wife. We also went as representatives of IBSI and of Club Z and Daisy. And then we brought our children with us. So it was kind of a family road trip. We drove up there with the boys and they got to see a lot of really cool stuff, music, speakers, and all that stuff. And that was great. However, and we need to talk about this. We wrote about this already, but I need to now say this here on this forum. We almost didn't go. And we almost didn't go because we looked at the nature of the event and we saw, we kind of had a feeling that it was just going to be America stands with Israel, and it wasn't really going to be a calling out of what's actually going on right now, right? There were calls for peace and we stand, okay, that's great and that's fine. But if we're not going to address the fact that this current administration does not stand with Israel, if we're not going to address that for the past 2 years now he's been in office, 3 years almost, that we've given billions of dollars to the Palestinian Authority in violation of the Taylor Force Act. The Taylor Force Act says we will not fund the PA if they continue to engage in pay for slay, which is paying Palestinians salaries for killing Israelis. So funding stopped during the Trump administration because it was passed during that administration. Biden administration came in and they continued it. So this whole time we've been breaking the law, funding the Palestinian Authority, which then funds Hamas, So we're actively funding both sides of this war right now. While we tell Israel that we stand with them, there was no mention of any of that. We kind of had a feeling, but we decided to go anyway because we wanted to show support to our Jewish brothers and sisters. We didn't want to give off the impression that we didn't care about them, and so we decided, you know what? No, we're gonna go. We're gonna connect people. We're gonna love on our friends, hug them, and be with them. And we had a great time. But we early on we said, okay, but if we don't see these things called out, we're gonna have to say something. So we're saying it now. All in all, it was a dog and pony show. Go ahead,
So
Olga.
if I can pause you there, I think it's going to be important for those that are listening in for the first time or those that may still have questions as to what does it matter, right? Why don't we just go and, like you expressed, stand in solidarity and showcase our support? Why is it not good enough for thousands upon or hundreds of upon thousands of people to come together? Do you want to take us through the why is that not enough? And
So,
sorry, before
mhm.
you go, I think it's also important for people to know that we aren't being partisan, right? Like, it's not about we're choosing this administration versus the other.
Yep.
It's the same principle that was alluded to when we were talking about the whole issue of race. It's a principle issue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Principle, because it's an abstract concept, is going to be represented by people or by things, occurrences that happen. And so, when it's embodied by somebody or something, that thing or that person has a name, and so in order to identify it, you need to call out that thing or call out that name. And so that's why, in relation to whether it's President Biden or President Trump or any other president, frankly, for as long as IBSI is around, if the principle is X, we're going to call it X, and if the principle is Y, we're going to call it Y. So I just wanted to add
Mm-hmm.
that, and then take us through the why, because I think that's important.
Absolutely. And just real quick, because one of our Monica just asked, not even the Republican senators said anything. Nope. No one in anyone's speeches mentioned anything about that. Now, so why does it matter, right? Why? So your question is, with the big numbers that was there, why wasn't that enough that we showed up? Well, because and again, this is our latest article in our Substack. You go to Africa Israel Weekly. If you go to IBSI.org, you can find our newsletter, Africa Israel Weekly, and you can see that I wrote about it. It matters. It wasn't enough because, um, well, first of all, at the end of it, what happened? What was the takeaway at the end? So we all came together and said, America stands with Israel, and that was kind of the theme. And every speaker who came up said, America stands with Israel, America stands with Israel, America stands with Israel. Okay, how? First of all, so how does America stand with Israel? Like, what's okay? If America's standing with Israel, can we at least, are we going to talk about then how we're not currently standing with Israel, or at least the actions that are being taken? I know I'm going to pause. I heard that noise too. We have kids, guys, and I heard a boom boom boom, and then
I will be back. Excuse me.
okay, so Olga will be back. Um, that's the reality of our lives, guys. We also our family IBSI is run by our big family, and we also have two kids. So now, um, so Olga said, why isn't that enough? So one of the things I wrote in the article was that we all came together, and even though it was a great display and it was love and we were able to be together and all that stuff, having your friends back means coming against anyone who is coming after your friend, right? And our CEO said this yesterday at our Standing with Israel event. He said, if I have to wonder whether or not you have my back, then you don't have my back. Right? If I have to wonder whether or not you're for me, then you're not for me. If I can't trust that you'll come to my defense when things get rough, then you're not defending me, right? And so in DC, you had a huge group of people who were saying, and I believe that most of the people there really do stand, like, we all came because we stand with Israel. But I'm talking about our administration, our government funds the Palestinian Authority in violation of the Taylor Force Act. We continue to fund, we're one of the funders for the UNRWA schools that teach this Jewish hatred in Gaza. We were trying to stop Israel from doing their ground operation to save their hostages, all that stuff. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, where's the supporting Israel? I'm sorry, where's the America stands with, how is America standing with Israel? And then to add insult to injury, while we were having our event on Tuesday, and this is what I talked about, you guys, while we were having our event on Tuesday, while it was going on, while speeches were being spoken and people were cheering and music was playing and people were singing and dancing and all that stuff, that was happening, our administration, the Biden administration, unfroze another $10 billion to Iran while the event was happening. So to answer Olga's question, which she'll be back in just a second, to answer her question is why wasn't that enough? Well, clearly it wasn't enough because while we were all together, 500,000 strong, the administration was currently signing more stuff that would damage Israel. Our administration was signing off on more things that could potentially destroy Israel and the West. So clearly, our government's not really that concerned about our 500,000 people coming together, because while we were together, they did other stuff. It was almost like the event was a distraction so they could do this other thing. And we at IBSI, from the beginning, we've always sought to try and figure out what. Okay, and I'm pausing for a second because someone else is asking how can I donate to IBSI. So I want to say one more time, thank you for asking that too. I appreciate it. You can go to ibsi.org and hit donate. You can become a legacy builder. And so for the person's asking on Instagram, so I'm just typing in our website here on Instagram, ibsi.org. You can see the donate button. A legacy builder means that you give monthly. And again, I'm my call to everyone who's watching this right now. You have people on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Go to ibsi.org and become a legacy builder. Give at least $18 a month. I'm asking today that you would commit $18 a month. As you're watching this, if you're enjoying what you've been hearing, if you've liked any of the stuff that we've put out, contents, articles, podcasts, our live events, whatever, if you enjoy what we do, we're asking you to commit at least $18 a month if you go to ibsi.org and become a legacy builder. So thank you for asking that question. I appreciate that. IBSI tries its best to get to one of the things that we love about, one of the things I'll say for me personally that I love about Israel and the NGOs especially, is that the no matter what it is, if it's agriculture, if it's counterterrorism, which is usually more governmental, if it's counterterrorism, if it's food insecurity, if water insecurity, whatever it is, when Israel helps another country, the theme of their NGO, their theme of their nonprofit, their organization, is to fix the problem. And I know that sounds so basic and so simple, but you guys, in a world where people like to use problems as political footballs, people like to use Jews as political football, people like to use black people as political footballs, people like to use the poor as political football, right? They like to point to the homeless and say, look at these homeless people, vote for me and I'll fix it. And nothing ever gets fixed, right? And that's what I mean by political football. It only becomes a topic to talk about during election season. And then when the elections are over, it's gone. One of the things that I love about Israeli non-government organizations, the ones that we've worked with, whether it's Innovation Africa, Gigawatt Global, Link, is that they go, okay, what's the problem? What is the root of this problem? Okay, let's attack that. Let's go. And that's we try to have that be our model at IBSI as much as possible. Is okay, where is it? So IBSI used to do in its early days when IBSI was basically just my father, and I was helping doing some events. We would do campus events. My dad would speak at campuses all around California and all around the country. And after a while, I don't know how long it took, maybe a few years. One thing we realized is, okay, these students are pawns, really. These Students for Justice in Palestine, these whether it's Jewish Voice for Peace, Muslim Student Association, whatever. These students. There was a time my father spoke at a university in Florida, and there were protesters outside, and one of the organizers of the event that was hosting my dad, our CEO, asked the students, "Why are you guys? What are you protesting? Oh, we're protesting Dumbiton in Washington. Okay, why?" And the leader of the protest said, "Well, we don't know why. We were told by our professors to do this." And that was one of the moments for my dad. I mean, he already kind of saw this already, but he was like, okay, there's a bigger problem here than just the students. There are people who are pulling strings here, and he talks about all the time. These progressives on the college campuses that are writing this curriculum that's coming against Israel, that's coming against the Jewish people. It's in their curriculum. It's in Harvard University. Hired Saeb Erekat, who used to work for the PLO, as one of their counselors on their campus. Are you kidding me? So the problem obviously isn't just going after SJP and the BDS movement. Is like, it's like swinging at the branches of a very large tree. Like, we're not actually getting to why this tree is here and why this tree shouldn't be here. We're just hitting branches, right? So that's what we try to do at IBSI. So what we saw in DC was not even really swinging at the branches. It was just like, there's this problematic, tree with thorns in it that's killing these plants, and we're just over here in the adjacent town saying we stand with plants. It's like, oh, okay, well, the plants literally right over here are being choked out by this thorny tree. Are we going to talk about that? Are we going to call attention to that? Are we going to try and stop watering this tree? Because right now we're actually watering this thorny tree, or allowing our government to do it. Not even, we're turning the other way and saying we stand with plants. I mean, that's what's going on. So that's not really getting at the root of the problem, right? That's just an event, right? If the goal was just to come together and have fun, then we have fun. Great. Israelis are still dying, right? Hamas is still, and our government is still funding Israel's enemies and releasing funds to Israel's enemies. I know we're a little bit over, but I do want to answer. So Monica just asked, can you give an example? If you could just clarify, which I said a lot of things just now, Monica, so just let me know what you're asking and I'll answer you. Now, someone asked, what do you think about the resolution to strip colleges of funding if they support anti-Semitism by Congress last night? Worth anything? I think we're like 5-6 decades too late. I think that's a great thing. It's something that we've advocated for a while. Money talks, and if we threaten to cut off funding, I mean, all that stuff would stop in a heartbeat. I mean, a lot of, that's these colleges get millions and billions of dollars every year. I think that we are so and again, I'm quoting our CEO. He spoke in Boston when he said this. We are so late to this party. We are so late to this party that at this point, when it comes to colleges and universities that are producing these Jew haters and anti-Semites and anti-Zionists and a bunch of other things, these same, by the way, side note, these same universities that have professors that say that parents don't have rights, don't have the authority over their children, right? These same universities are producing that. You have this stuff going on. Right now, the professors at Harvard and Yale and Princeton and Cornell and UC Davis and Berkeley, they're the children of the professors who started this brainwashing stuff. This goes back to the 60s. Our children who are in those universities are being brainwashed by the children of those professors. That's how deeply embedded this is. That's how legacy this is. And so, whereas I do agree with threatening to cut off funding for these colleges, one, I hope it does still go through, but two, I mean, it's going to take a lot more than, at this point, this machine has been moving for so long. Like what's happening right now, what happened in California with the ethnic studies curriculum is that had a lot of anti-Israel stuff in it that denigrated Dr. King and called him weak and docile and all those things. And we were fighting against that curriculum. One of the things that happened was that, public school teachers have the power to introduce extracurricular curriculum, if you will, that into their classroom. So even though that initial draft didn't get accepted and then they did another draft, these professors were then, instead of going and having these hearings, they would go to individual schools, these teachers would, and these activists, individual public schools all over California, and try and convince the teachers of these schools to adopt that curriculum. And so if you're asking me what I think about that, cutting off funding, I think that's great. I just think that we're way past that now. We're way past that now. Some of our textbooks and curriculum is being funded by Qatar. I mean, we need to be at the point where we are like, if we're not in a place where we're seriously considering completely dismantling entire systems. And I'm being serious, like the United Nations and all that stuff, like really uncovering all this stuff. Because it's not just the anti-Israel bias in the United Nations. We talked about this before. The late Kofi Annan talked about how while we're focusing on Israel, there are many other countries that don't get the light of day. They're suffering greatly. And this is coming from a person who wasn't necessarily a Zionist in that sense. He had some stuff to say about Israel too, but he said, okay, but we're just focusing so much on Israel, right? And so this is something that's been happening for such a long period of time that it's going to take a lot more than just right now cutting off funding to colleges. First of all, they'll get their funding from somewhere else. And secondly, it's only gonna all of the millions of students that have been whose minds have been shaped from this. Our culture and society are going to change. They say the students of today are the leaders of tomorrow. We already have the leaders of tomorrow in Congress. Congress tomorrow is now, right? We have our politicians, and it's only going to grow. We keep talking about the squad. The squad is a vast group of people now, guys. It's not just those 3-4 women. We're in the thick of it right now. And so I think the first thing that we have to acknowledge as advocates is how far behind we are. That's the first step to solving a problem really is to really truthfully assess where we are and how we might have fallen short, because that'll filter out some other solutions and now help us get to the right. So just like I said, just like with the Israeli NGOs, they say, okay, what is the issue here? We're going to do some research. We're going to talk to people and get to the heart. Okay, this is the heart. This is the heart of the issue. Okay, let's go after that. That's what we have to do. So we have to have a fair and truthful analysis of what has been taking place for decades. And honestly, how some of us Israel advocacy groups have not only allowed it to happen, but we're advocating for it to happen. Even with remember the California Ethnic Studies curriculum I was telling you about? There were Israel advocacy groups that were not advocating for the ethnic study curriculum to be banned, but they were advocating for certain parts of it. Okay, fine, you can keep in there the stuff you say about Ashkenazi Jews, but let's make sure we insert stuff about Mizrahi Jews, right? Okay, whatever, you can say that stuff about Martin Luther King, but just make sure that you have a little bit of Holocaust history in there. It's like, you guys know the problem is the whole entire thing was garbage. The whole entire thing was poison, and we weren't on one accord. We were all disparate. Some of us were like, no, we got to get rid of the whole thing because it's detrimental to the Black community. It's detrimental to any group, especially minority groups, because it teaches people of color that they're victim. They'll always be victims forever and ever and ever. It doesn't matter what they do. They'll always be on the bottom. Some people saying, no, that's fine. That's actually true, but let's not spit on Israel. It's like, no, you guys, the spitting on Israel is connected to this. The whole victimhood thing, the same victimhood mentality that says that what Hamas did on October 7th was justified. That's the victimhood mentality that's being taught in California public schools right now. Those things are connected. So now we are up against all this pro-Hamas, globalize the intifada BS, and we're saying, where's this coming from? Well, part of it is that some of us allowed that to happen. Some of us cheered as it was happening because we thought it was a good thing in the name of social justice. Some of us supported Black Lives Matter. Some of us came against IBSI for coming against Black Lives Matter. And now we're saying, wow, the same people come to us. Why does the Black community hate Jews so much? First of all, it's not the Black community that hates Jews so much. It's these specific people, right? These groups in academia. Secondly, part of it was because when they were doing their thing, you signed off on it because whatever the reasons are. And then you came against us for saying, no, we don't need to. In 2013, when BLM started, we said, this is a game. No, guys, let's not do this. Oh, you don't understand. We got to know. We have to march and we got to show them our support. And we can't make things about us. It's not our turn. Okay, well, now here we are. Now we have these people on the streets literally chanting for destruction of the Jewish people. And now we're saying, how do we get here? The first step to solving a problem is to acknowledge how we got here, to really be real, and then to move accordingly. Yes, taking some of these steps, you will be labeled a right-wing extremist. You will be labeled a Trump supporter, whatever those things that you don't want to be labeled. But guess what? If you're going to stand up for truth, you're going to be labeled things that you don't want to be labeled. They're going to call you names. They're going to talk about you. Your friends are going to leave you. People who used to have your back are going to start spreading lies about you. That's what happens. And if you're not willing for that to happen to you, then you're not an advocate in this fight. You're not an asset in this fight. You're here for the ride. And I don't want to burst people's bubble, but that's just the truth here. We have to acknowledge where we are, how we got here, and our part, the part that we played in getting us here. All right, let me calm down now. I see a lot more people have logged on. We're way over time, and I apologize. It's 9:12. And so we're usually done at 9 a.m. 9 p.m. Eastern time. And but I thank you guys for hopping on here. Listen, for those who are just on, again, I'll say this: become a legacy builder with IBSI. All this work that IBSI has been doing. Someone said you need a bigger platform. How can we do this? First and foremost, let me tell you something about the Washington family. I come from a long line of hard workers. We joke around, right? Our family, and my mom's side of the family too, the Carters. We, like every family, there's like, especially every family and every extended family, all that stuff. There are things, we always have issues and things with our family, stuff like that. But one thing that you cannot say about us is that we're lazy. We will work hard. We've been able to do all the stuff that we've done. If you've been tracking us, you've seen, we went to South Africa at the end of last year with our ambassadors, took our ambassadors to Israel. We've been training them ever since. We've been plugging them into different things. We've had our IBSI ambassadors represented at rallies and events. We've had our IBSI pastors all over the place. We've been doing the work. IBSI is doing the work. And we've been able to do the work with, minimal resources. And part of the reason why is because it's family, right? So when we need to, it's okay, we're all about the same vision and we're all just gonna have to do this. Like the event we did yesterday, I don't think we're getting paid from that. Like we do what we do because we are supposed to do it. And we've been doing the best that we can with the resources that we have. However, we cannot sustain that. For the past few weeks, I was delivering pizzas. And my manager had to let me go. And she had to let me go just recently because I was gone a lot. Okay, I have to speak at this thing. Okay, I know I said that I'll be here on Tuesday, but actually on Tuesday, I'm going to be in DC for this big event. Yeah, now we're planning this because, ever since October 7th. And my manager was nice and really she tried to accommodate as much as possible. She wasn't even upset. She was just like, look, I just can't, I don't know how I can't schedule you, consistently knowing that you're probably going to not make it on some days. Like I need someone to be more consistent. Okay, I get it. Right. So we do what we can. And then we try to do what we can, in terms of, but listen, it's not sustainable. Where IBSI is going and the direction that we're headed in and how God has been opening doors, we need your support more than ever. So please go to IBSI.org and become a legacy builder. I'm challenging everyone who's watching this to give at least $18 a month. Commit $18 a month. At least. If you can do more, if you can do way more, hey, do way more. We won't get mad at you for that. We won't get mad. But if 18 is all you can do, at least give $18 a month. Everyone is, there's about 14, 15 people watching on Instagram now. I don't know how many on LinkedIn, on YouTube, but whoever under the sound of my voice. And if you're watching this recording, become a legacy builder with IBSI. Everything that we've been doing, we'll be able to take to a much higher level. And our platform will continue to grow because of that. We work hard. We'll continue to work hard. And we've always worked hard with minimal resources. And just imagine what we can do with our work ethic with the resources that we need. So scan the QR code, or if you're on Instagram, IBSI.org right now. Become a legacy builder with IBSI. We'd very much appreciate it. Okay. You guys, that wraps up our segment for today. Again, I apologize. We're 15 minutes over. There's been a lot going on, though, and I think that there is a shifting that's happening where people are starting to kind of see what's happening and what we really need to be doing, and we appreciate that. So thank you so much. We hope to see you again next week. Again, same time, same place, Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. You guys have a great week. Thank you so much, Olga, for joining. I know she had to go. Someone said, I don't see that option. There's a button that says donate on IBSI.org. You see that button that says donate. You can give to IBSI. Again, you guys, thank you so much. Have a good rest of your week. Have a happy Thanksgiving. And to our brothers and sisters in Israel, we continue to pray for you and stand with you and call out the evil where we see it. There'll be much more to come soon. Thank you guys. Have a good week.